Ahead on America This Week.
More.
Ahead on America This Week.
More kudos to Cardi B. It's not my business. My children won't listen to that. But at the same time, we should be able to objectively say that this woman had no business interviewing Joe Biden.
A war of words between conservative political commentator Candace Owens and rapper Cardi B.
We was at the White House making change while she was at another house promoting sexuality and being over-sexualized.
And you don't want to miss my conversation with internet sensations and vloggers Diamond and Silk.
Because there are only 4 people in the room. And Bolton says it didn't happen. Sarah Huckabee says it didn't happen.
Host of No Spin News and my former colleague Bill O'Reilly returns. I'm also discussing corruption and the Biden family with the president of the Government Accountability Institute, Peter Schweizer. That and so much more.
He made up the story. It's a totally made-up story.
Quite frankly, if what is written in the Atlantic is true, it's disgusting.
Right now on America This Week. Welcome to America This Week. The days are getting shorter, the nights longer, and the chaos spreading across the nation is showing no signs of slowing down whatsoever. Unofficially, summer runs from Memorial Day in May through Labor Day in September. Typically, the lazy days of summer are a time for fun, relaxation, barbecues, and baseball. This summer of 2020 has been anything but that. Leading up to the summer, things were heating up. America was mixing a toxic cocktail of pent-up animosity over race, a pandemic that scared the bejesus out of people, and a divisive presidential election on the horizon. The ingredients added up to a volatile concoction of emotional explosives just ready to go off. Almost poetic in its timing, on Memorial Day, the murder of George Floyd lit that fuse, and summer 2020 exploded into mayhem. Portland, once a gorgeous city. The Rose Gardens are awesome. By the way, try the Voodoo Donuts. Amazing. Now, a smoldering hellhole of self-righteous leftists surrounded by too scared to fight citizens. Portland has been an epicenter for protests for a decade. Antifa, the left-wing troublemakers, weaseled its way into peaceful protests and turned them into violent chaos, proving once again they're nothing more than professional agitators financed by wealthy socialists who hate the American way of life, freedom, liberty, capitalism. Keep your eye on Portland. It may not be over in Portland. Seattle, once an absolutely stunning, beautiful city with sprawling ocean views. Seattle may even be hipper than it is gorgeous, known for Pikes Pier, a seafood palooza. 2020, however, Seattle was the site of one of the most peculiar social experiments in American history. The Chaz turned shop was the autonomous zone created when protests turned violent and the city's police precinct was overrun. When Mayor Jenny Durkan instructed her police force to stand down on the violent agitators, Chaz was born. It didn't take a fortune teller to see the problems that keeping first responders out of an area filled with agitated protesters, free-wielding firearms, and mixing in a cocktail of drugs, what that would create. A few weeks of mayhem led the police chief to resign, which was followed by 2 murders. That wasn't what ended the Chaz experiment, however. It wasn't until the mayor's mansion was surrounded by protesters that finally got Mayor Jenny Durkan to stop the violence, for now. Minneapolis was known for its clean streets, not its mean streets. A Midwest hidden city of a gem, known for booyah, a stew they cook in 100-gallon vats. But Memorial Day 2020, Minneapolis changed. The murder of George Floyd was the torch that lit the city and the country on fire. Race replaced the deadly pandemic on TV screens all over the world, and it all started when a white cop kept his knee on a black man until he suffocated while 3 other cops stood by, watched, and did nothing. The streets of Minneapolis exploded in chaos. From that moment, the video went public. If you thought Chaz was bad and Portland was ugly, Minneapolis blew them out of the water. Rioting begat looting. Looting begat murder. When it was finally over, for the time being at least, Minneapolis looked more like a World War II bombed-out city than a Midwestern American gem of a city. Kenosha, just a short drive north of Chicago, Kenosha always lived in the shadows of the big cities, Chicago and Green Bay. Cheese breadsticks, by the way, are a Kenosha favorite. But in 2020, it began. Another unarmed black man was shot in the back by white cops, and Kenosha erupted, to say the least. Even as, and I'm not downplaying the magnitude and the anger and resentment flowing from the Floyd murder, but even as the country was trying to heal from the death of Floyd, Jacob Blake was shot in the back. And as with George Floyd, the video showed the details that sparked the Kenosha riots. The end result, a similar scene to so many other great American cities engulfed in flames. Summer 2020 started just days after the blooming of the world-famous DC cherry blossom trees, one of the most stunning visuals you'll see in any U.S. city. While the nation's capital has always been the de facto place to protest in America, this year will stand out in the history books. The city protested and protested and protested and protested. And when the protests met up at the Republican National Convention, D.C. devolved into bedlam. Rioters clashed with police. Neither side gave up ground, and it was all on display in front of a massive TV audience. It was difficult to separate the Black Lives Matter groups from the Antifa groups. One commonality, they both wanted the world's attention, and boy, they got it. It didn't matter, from U.S. senators to convention goers, innocent people were assaulted leaving that convention. Lady Liberty wept. The Windy City, the city on Lake Michigan, my hometown, the land of deep dish pizza and old style beer. Not a week goes by that Chicago streets aren't filled with gunfire, blood, homicide. The summer of 2020 has been bloodier than any other year on record in Chicago. That's quite a statement, given that Chicago is known for being one of the bloodiest cities in America. It's almost as if the mayhem in other cities has encouraged more bloodshed in Chicago. And if there's any city that doesn't need that kind of competition, it's Chicago. Trust me. What a year it's been, folks. Sadly, America has become unrecognizable. Now that summer has unofficially ended, will the cooler air also cool the tempers in our overheated cities, or will the mayhem continue? Let's ask the America This Week Magic 8 Ball. Too soon to tell. Thanks, Magic 8 Ball. You're always right. She's a conservative commentator who made headlines this week for a very public feud with rapper Cardi B. Candace Owens, thank you for joining us. Sounds like this all started after your interview on the Ben Shapiro show. Can you walk us through what went down?
Sure. Ben Shapiro and I were really just having an honest conversation about the state of politics on the left and a lot of the pandering that goes on. And in particular, we were discussing the fact that Joe Biden, after virtually a year of hiding in his basement, decided to come up for air and do an interview about Black America with Cardi B, an artist who has a #1 song that's extremely vulgar about her female genitalia. And the interview was nothing short of an absolute joke. You know, she was making noises. She had extremely long nails on, and she was basically just reading off what sounded like a dream list to Santa of things that she wanted that were in direct contradiction with one another. And I called this out as being insulting to Black America, that they would platform such ignorance, like they couldn't find somebody with deeper intellect. Well, whether that was a Black individual on the left or the right, you know, the Black America has a lot more to offer than Cardi B when it comes to politics. The Democrats don't care about that. They're all about pandering. They're all about figuring out who has the most followers, despite how vulgar, you know, how trashy their music can be, no matter how much that music is actually harming the culture of Black America and the fabric of our values. And she freaked out on Twitter and started really just saying more vulgar things, and said a lot of obscenities, a lot of pointedly racist things towards my husband, who happens to be white. And you know, I took her for what she was worth, and corrected her on a lot of the things she was saying that were wrong about Trump, wrong about conservatives. And I did it with class. I didn't need to get down to her level, but she had pretty big meltdown about it, and it was quite funny.
You know, and she did. At one point, she tweeted, and I think we have the tweet, that she's basically calling you out, saying that President Trump, you're right, I have the #1 song, I have a huge platform that can make millions. Go vote to get the man that used you. And she highlighted that in capitals, meaning President Trump used you. I mean, how does it feel being a black woman, hearing another black woman suggesting that you're being used by the president?
It's pointedly ridiculous for a lot of reasons. And this is sort of the caricature that's out about me in the media. Like I'm being paid by Trump, or I'm being paid by the RNC, or paid by Fox News. I've never accepted a single check from any of those people. I'm an individual. I run my own organization. And I do support the president because I believe he represents a rare moment of opportunity for Black America to wake up to this leftist narrative, to wake up to the pandering of the left, because he has the spine to stand up and to stand firm against the libel and smears of him being a racist. And I've laid out my arguments for supporting Trump. It has nothing to do with him using me.
Well, I'd like to jump in here. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'd just like to point out that Joe Biden gave Cardi B an interview. We've been asking Joe Biden or a representative for the better part of 4 months to come on the show. We don't even get a call back yet. He sits down with a rapper. Look, I get it. You want to cater to Hollywood, and you want the left to love you, but this woman, Cardi B, is pretty, as you point out, pretty vulgar. Is this what we want our president to be, I don't know, aspiring to, or having our children aspire to?
And the answer is no. And, any person can look up her #1 trending song. It's way too despicable for us to mention what the lyrics are on air, and there's a dance that goes to it. And if you go on the internet, there's a lot of young 12-year-old, 13-year-old girls doing this dance, talking about how, good or great their female genitalia is and what they can do for men. This is prostitution turned into, some form of deteriorated art. And look, I'm an unapologetic free market capitalist. If there's a market for it and people are buying it, more kudos to Cardi B. It's not my business. My children won't listen to that. But at the same time, we should be able to objectively say that this woman had no business interviewing Joe Biden, especially because he's given virtually no other interviews the entire year. Right. And he doesn't know her music. He couldn't name one Cardi B album. And that's all I was saying. It was more me calling out the DNC.
Right. Candace, you have a new book out. It's called Blackout. Tell us what Cardi B can learn from reading your book.
There's a lot she can learn. Particularly, I take her through the chapter on culture, which I believe is chapter number 10, which just talks about this deterioration of Black culture, and to remind her, when people say to me, Candace, you don't understand Black culture, or you're not a part of Black culture, I'm not here to try to be a part of this culture. Black culture that I recognize is the Black culture that I was raised on my grandfather's day, the 1950s and 1960s. Music like The Temptations, like Diana Ross, music that was about music, about hope, and about family. What we have seen happen over time is that the more that government grew, Black values were compromised. And what we see today is really a result of democratic principles, of democratic policies, and of democratic practices over the last 4 decades that have disintegrated our community and removed fathers from the home, removed structure, removed responsibility. And what we're seeing today is a Black community that has been infantilized by various movements like Black Lives Matter, which are encouraging Black Americans to act like toddlers, knowing that they'll never aspire to great things in their future. So my book in a nutshell is a waking up Black America to what I believe is a modernized, updated plantation, much like the plantations that the Democrats ran in the South right. back when we were slaves.
All right, Candace, we're going to leave it there. The book is called Blackout. We're going to reach out to Cardi B and offer her an opportunity to come on the show as well. I tell you what, I'm not holding my breath, though. Not going to hold my breath. Candace Owens, everyone, thank you so much. Candace Owens wasn't the only target by Cardi B this week. The rapper tweeted this photo that she says shows President Trump pandering to the Black community. Front and center in that picture are none other than Diamond and Silk. The internet sensations and video vloggers are back with me. Ladies, thank you. What is your response to none other than the one, Cardi B?
Well, you have to understand, when you look at Cardi B, Hollywood has bought her. Like, she's been brought up by Hollywood.
That's right.
She as a woman, as a Black woman, she's representing derogatory, degrading herself, and over-sexualizing a fantasy about who she is. And I think that the left and these left-leaning liberals think that all Black women act like this.
That's
you know,
right.
when she tweeted out that picture, what was she implying? We wasn't praising Trump, we was praying with him. We was at the White House making change while she was at another house promoting sexuality and being over-sexualized.
That's right.
And this is what happened when you have Black people that's been brought out by this liberal ideology. It is designed to destroy their very existence and even destroy Black culture. And that's what you see happening now.
And they also become the creator of their own demise by being used as a tool to push a white liberal agenda.
And Silk, let me stay with you for a second. The juxtaposition of the two, you have Cardi B, who has some very, very raunchy lyrics, and she's very sexualized, and then your group there praying with the president. You couldn't be any more diverse.
Well, you couldn't be, but you got to understand when you're ignorant to the fact that there's a difference between praising someone and praying for someone. That's the reason why we call him Jim Crow Joe. Jim Crow Joe sat down with her and didn't sit down with someone that will ask him substantive questions. So that's who she is. We're not trying to downplay who she is, but at the end of the day, there is something within the culture that creates this stigma that it is okay to be a particular way in front of everybody's eyes. And then when you have somebody that uses the Black community to push their agenda on the Black community, keep you stuck in the pains of your ancestors, this is how you get hook-wink into voting for somebody that absolutely is going to do absolutely nothing for you or your community.
So Diamond, Linda, do you believe Joe Biden is just pandering to Cardi B and the Black community for votes and has no intention of helping the Black community?
Oh, absolutely. Let me tell you something. If Joe Biden was interested in helping the Black community, why didn't he do it within the 47 years he's been in government?
That's right.
So you think we want to give him 4 years? He has done nothing. He wrote a crime bill, and his partner in crime, Kamala Harris, pushed the crime bill, okay?
Right.
He's decimated the Black community, the Black family, the Black man. So you think he want to do something for Black people? Absolutely not. Show me his record where he's done something for Black people in 47 years.
Okay,
right.
so well, let me ask you, Silk, why then does the Black community generally vote Democrat? It almost doesn't matter who the candidates are. Trump did, I think he did somewhere 8 or 9%, which was seen as a good number. Why is it so hard to get the Black vote for a Republican?
Well, that's because it's an ideology that's been instilled within the Black community. We've been taught and conditioned that you're supposed to vote for whoever the head of the ticket is. But for Diamond and Silk, we realize that just because you're Black doesn't mean you have to vote Democrat. You can think outside of the box. So you have a lot of Black people that is really on the fence, and what they need to do is jump off the fence, open up the gate, and walk their in. A lot of people is waking up to the hoopla of the Democrat Party and realize that they've done absolutely nothing for the Black community, for all community. What they continue to do is push this systemic racism, push it off on you, make you feel like a victim instead of feeling victorious. But for Diamond and Silk, what we are here to do is to educate people, especially the Black community, and let them know you don't have to continue to settle for less. You don't have to continue to settle for crumb just to get a crumb cake. Get all of the ingredients so you can make your own cake. And that's why we voted for Donald J. Trump, because he's given us the opportunity, all people, including Black people, the opportunity to get it for yourself.
Diamond, is there systemic racism in America? I mean, I believe there may be, but I also believe it's getting better than it has in the past, and it's got a long way to go. But is it wrong to say that there is some sort of deep-seated racism that the country still is gripped by?
Well, when we talk about systemic racism, it doesn't have anything to do with just skin color.
Right.
It has a lot to do with the constructs of some of the system that causes ones or others to discriminate against people. And it doesn't mean it's because you're Black or it's because you're white.
That's right.
When we look at affirmative action, that is a form of systemic racism,
That's
okay?
right.
So when we talk about systemic racism, it exists in the constructs, but it's not just geared up, it's black people. No, anybody can be discriminated
So
against.
allow me, let me ask Silk first and then Diamond. This is a very, very touchy, a very sensitive subject. And again, I have to be very careful because I can be held accountable for just about everything I say. I'm going to do this very, very gently. Can African Americans, can black people be racist? Silk, you first.
Yes. Yes, black people can be racist. If you go to our website and look at the diamondandsilk.com and look at the wall of shame, you see majority of black people who is making disparaging statements against Diamond and Silk, against us. They call us white supremacists, and we're two black women. So yes, black people can be racist against his own race. Just look at what's happening right now. When you have an organization, Black Lives Matter, out there in the street, they're still burning down black communities, and they're being used to push this particular agenda.
Let me get Diamond in there.
Can be.
Absolutely. I'm glad you touched on Black Lives Matter, because when you look at this organization, it's a propaganda organization calling themselves Marxism, trying to push socialism and communism on black people, when black people, we were born in this country free,
right,
not as slaves. On top of that, this organization, Black Lives Matter, want to disrupt and dismantle the nuclear family, meaning they want to take the man out of the family. What you want to do is you want to deny black children a mother and father. Why is that? So yes, black people can be racist.
All right, we're gonna leave it there. We're gonna throw a book cover up. This is their new book. Uprising. There it is, Diamond and Silk, folks, and you can see them on Newsmax as well. Diamond and Silk, always a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
He's the president of the Government Accountability Institute, Peter Schweizer. Peter, thank you for being here. You also have a documentary about the Bidens and China. Tell us what you found out. What do you know?
What we know is when Joe Biden was vice president of the United States and when he was appointed point person on U.S. policy towards China, shortly after that, literally within months, his family scored a series of commercial deals, not just with Chinese businesses, but with the Chinese government. And these were commercial ties and opportunities to make money that they had no background and really no, I would argue, legitimate reason for getting.
You know, and Peter, we've talked about this for the better part of probably 2 years now. Hunter Biden and some of the things that he arranged. Can we tie that to Joe Biden's vice presidency with President Obama? Did Biden go over there, Joe Biden go over there and say, I want to help arrange something for my son? Is there a link there?
No, I don't think it's that explicit, and I don't think it needs to be. I mean, if you look at the manner in which China has worked to curry favor with political elites in places like Australia or New Zealand, the way they do it is without really even saying a word. They cozy up to politicians and their families by giving them commercial deals. In the case of the Bidens, it's so explicit and obvious. I mean, think about it for a second. You certainly understand markets and how things work. The Chinese government sets up the first Chinese government-funded private equity firm in the free trade zone in Shanghai. They don't give it to Goldman Sachs. They don't give it to UBS. They don't give it to anybody like that. They give it to the son of the vice president. That would be Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden has no background in private equity. He has no background in China. It's very clear what the Chinese were doing. There were other ties as well. There was a commercial real estate deal where a Chinese company called Gemini that's linked to the Chinese military that comes in and buys part of Hunter Biden's commercial real estate firm. Again, he has no background in commercial real estate. The list goes on and on. Everybody who studies this and knows how this works knows what's going on. The problem is the Bidens took these deals happily, even knowing that the Chinese were doing it for an explicit purpose. And that purpose is to get favorable treatment from Joe Biden. And I would argue that they have received favorable treatment.
And that's really the most important link to this, because this, Peter, I've been around a long time. I've seen this go on for many, many decades, where lawmakers go, cozy up to foreign governments. And Bill Clinton, I'm thinking of the $500,000 speeches that they made, not illegal until what you just hit on, the last part right there. What does China get out of this? Do we have any concrete evidence that there was a quid pro quo? We need the pro quo.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so the question of whether it's legal or illegal, I will leave to somebody else. But it's certainly dirty, and it's certainly corruption. A lot of corruption in Washington, D.C. is legal. But what you do see is Joe Biden's fingerprints on a lot of policies during this same time period, and the Chinese end up doing quite well. He, takes a trip to Asia. This is a trip to Asia, including a visit to Beijing when Hunter Biden finalizes that deal. Joe Biden is very soft, says very little about what China is doing in the South China Sea. He's not aggressive on trade policy. There's a question that's looming now about Chinese access to U.S. markets. In the New York Stock Exchange, for example, and the fact that they're exempt from certain things like Sarbanes-Oxley. There are Joe Biden's fingerprints on that as well. So when you look at these two, can you actually show an email that says, let us do these deals and we will give these policies? No. But as you know, Eric, it never works that way in Washington, D.C. And my point would be people should not look at this simply in the confines of whether it's legal or not. They should really ask the question, do we want our leaders, any of our leaders, doing these kinds of secret, corrupt deals with foreign governments, particularly a foreign government that's our chief rival? And I would say that it's a perilous course for America if we tolerate this kind of thing.
And we take it one step further, Peter. Yeah, you don't want them doing it. They do it, but you don't want them doing it. You want to catch them. They're rarely dumb enough to put it in email. I got you. Here's why it matters to our audience, to the American people. Huawei, a big telecom experiment. Let's call it an experiment. There's concerns that the Chinese government will be spying on every single thing we do if we go to 5G using some of the Huawei technology. President Trump has said, no, we're not doing it. We're going to push back on Chinese telecom, some chip makers over there. The concern is if it were a President Biden, would he have the same concern for the American people and our security, safety, and privacy?
Yeah, and I would say the answer is no. All you have to do is look at how he's talked about China over the last decade, really since these deals started. I mean, we talk about this in the film. We quote him. He says China is not a threat. They are our friends. They're not something we should worry about. By the way, when he says these things, Eric, he is kind of on an island of his own. I mean, we in the film, for example, quote and have audio from Ben Rhodes, who is Barack Obama's national security advisor, and he says China is a threat and a challenge to the United States. Barack Obama has said the same thing. So Joe Biden is really unique in this way. He talks about China in a way that's pretty different than any other political figure at this level.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. Peter Schweizer, always great reporting, investigative reporting. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Eric.
Straight ahead, he's a household name. You don't want to miss my interview with Bill O'Reilly. And for weeks now, we've reached out to the Biden-Harris campaign to get the candidates or a representative on our show. And for weeks, they've continued to just ignore our request. Not even a call back. Mr. Biden, Senator Harris, our offer still stands. Name the time and the place. We'll make it happen.
America, one nation, from Florida to St. Louis to Seattle. America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, delivers facts, not falsehoods.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I appreciate the opportunity to clear some of it up.
Hard-edged opinions.
We can no longer rely on China to be the primary producer of so many critical products that we need at a time of crisis.
Tough topic debates.
Has the mainstream media vetted Joe Biden the way they vetted others on the right?
I just believe that all women have the right to speak their truth and that those truths should also be investigated. The end, regardless of what political party they are a part of.
America This Week reveals the topics and issues that pulse throughout America. Fighting COVID-19.
We're working with every single state to be able to detect outbreaks before they spread into the community.
And the path forward.
Getting back to some degree of normality, that will come. We will get over this.
America This Week investigates chaos at the southern border.
Go, 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 go.
The poisoning of America.
It's in the soils, it's in the water, and it's in our blood.
Toxic chemicals linked to multiple cancers found in towns across America.
We were poisoned, and we are still poisoned.
Almost every day, there is a new community that is finding out that their water is contaminated.
America This Week relentlessly seeks the truth on your behalf.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week. Let's get right to the interview segment. He just released a new book, Killing Crazy Horse. Welcome back to the host of No Spin News and my good friend Bill O'Reilly. Bill, you are a prolific writer. Killing series has been fantastic. I'll be honest with you. I started reading the book last night. I want to talk to you about it. Some things I wanted for you to explain to me. I want to do that in 1 second. Bill, let's talk about, I think, the story, at least of this part of the campaign, that Jeffrey Goldberg at The Atlantic is using unnamed sources to call out Donald Trump, saying that he said that some military personnel who were dead or captured were losers. Your thoughts on using unnamed sources in a story this important?
Well, I think it's a scandal. I think The Atlantic magazine is a piece of garbage. I mean, it's owned by Lorraine Jobs, who in June donates $610,000 to the Biden campaign. She hires a guy named Jeffrey Goldberg, who has been hating Donald Trump for, I guess, ever since Donald Trump was a famous person. The guy, if you go down what the Atlantic has done, President Trump has done one good thing in his 3.5 years in office, according to The Atlantic magazine. So then it comes out with a story that says, according to 4 sources with firsthand knowledge of the situation. That's how they quoted it. Well, if you had an anonymous source that heard the president say these terrible things, wouldn't you say, according to a source who heard the president directly say these things, wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, you do. And you taught me, Bill, listen, if the audience doesn't know, I used to fill in for Bill at Fox for some 200 plus shows. And you taught me that when you're reading a story, and it's very important, whether it's the New York Times, the Atlantic, wherever, watch carefully how these reporters talk about their sources. A lot of times, it tips off who these people may be. Am I right?
Listen, I don't know what firsthand knowledge means. Do you?
Well,
you know
I assume it means I heard it directly.
No, they would have said that. They would have said, according to a source who heard the president say it. They didn't. So that means it was not someone in the room, because there are only 4 people in the room. And Bolton says it didn't happen. Sarah Huckabee says it didn't happen. So
yeah, but Bill, what about this one? What about this one? Another one of our former colleagues, Jennifer Griffin, says she's got also a name, but she also has a couple of sources that say it did happen.
No, but that's not exactly what Jennifer said. So I went over this on the No Spin News last night in micro detail. That's my newscast every night, and I hope people will sample it. Jennifer Griffin is an honest reporter and an excellent person. I think you would agree. I used her, and I never doubted what she told me to be true. But Jennifer herself did not frame the story properly. Okay, your sources, are they the same sources that Atlantic used? Jennifer, do you know what sources Atlantic used? Maybe it's the same people. Because
you know, Bill, at one point, and I agree with you, Jennifer Griffin is one of the best reporters in the street and a good person as well. At one point, she said, my sources, and she doubled down. She said, my sources are unimpeachable, number one. And she also said, if you caught this, and I listened, like you say, listen, she said, these are sources that are not unknown to the president, and he knows. Now, why can't we figure out who this person is and go right at him and say, General Kelly, was it you? Did you say this? Or whomever it could be?
Obviously, Trump thinks it was Kelly. That's clear, all right? But for Jennifer Griffin, I don't know if she used the same sources that the Atlantic magazine used, because Jennifer would not know who Atlantic Magazine used. They're not going to tell her. She works for Fox. So it could be she's doing the same thing that the Atlantic did. And you got to define, I never use anonymous sources, ever, in a factual presentation, ever. All right? And that's my training at CBS News, ABC News. You couldn't do it back then. Now you can do it all day long. But if you do use it, you have to define it. So I don't know what Jennifer Griffin is confirming. Is she confirming a rumor somebody heard?
You know, that's a problem. That's the problem with anonymous sources. It literally comes down to almost gossip. It's one step above gossip, and you have to really trust the people are saying. I trust Griffin. I don't know Jeffrey Goldberg. You know, I wouldn't recognize him on the street. I'm not sure I can trust him. You know, Bill, let's talk a little bit about, I want to talk about your book before we run out of time. The book, Killing Crazy Horse. So I start reading it, and I'm looking and I'm hearing there's a group of Indians, and you point out the use of Indians is not pejorative, it's not racist, it's the way people were describing Native Americans for many, many years. But then there's this new fort that pops up, and it's white people, slaves, and Indians within the fort, and another group of Indians is coming. This feels to me, the slave comes running back in. He's about to get 100 lashes because he had some information that was true. This feels to me like, I don't know, like the media right now.
No, I'm telling you the truth. I'm not telling you that the brutal guy at Fort Mims in Alabama who was going to beat that slave, who, by the way, the Indians subsequently killed, all right? I'm not telling you anything other than this is what he did. I'm not saying that America is a horrible nation because there are some bad people in it. And that's what the far left is doing. They're basically saying because there was historical injustice, and by the way, every country on the planet has had historical injustice, every single one, all right? I'm saying this is what happened. All right? So you, the reader of Killing Crazy Horse, you can make up your own mind about the Indian Wars. Who were the noble people? Who were the good presidents? Who were the bad presidents? Who were the good Indian chiefs? Who were the bad Native American leaders? That's what I do. I present history in a factual way. I don't try to spin it one way or the other. And because to do that, I'd be a fraud.
And no hearsay in any of the Killing series.
No anonymous source.
O'Reilly, good job, by the way, using good job with Makeda, dedicating the book to Makeda. What a great person. She's been your assistant for 20-something years. Solid person.
Well, I'm glad you liked the book, Bolling, and I'm glad you're actually reading the book because that keeps you away from drinking heavily. So keep reading that book.
Bill O'Reilly, everybody. No Spin News on the first. Also, you can catch that on Stir, one of the digital platforms owned by Sinclair. Thank you, Bill.
Okay. Talk soon.
Next on America This Week, Dr. Sebastian Gorka and Amisha Cross break down both sides of the hottest topics of the week. And a little later, Politico's White House reporter Dan Littman joins me to discuss balls and strikes. Now take a look at this. Check out this Border Patrol agent. That's right, the dog whose name I'm not allowed to disclose, sniffing through the U.S. mail facility in Miami. These dogs find coke, meth, and fentanyl literally every hour of every day. Illegal and deadly drugs that would make their way into our communities. The men, women, and canines who are at the forefront of the epidemic on drug-related deaths in America are very literally saving lives. Next week, I'll bring you video from a massive West Coast drug offload. If you want to help out in this fight, this critical fight, please go to ericchasefoundation.org. Together, we will save lives of our most precious assets, our children. This week, many of you helped out. The top donors this week were Annie, Kay, and Tina. A signed copy of my book, Wake Up America, is on its way to all three of you.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person ready to serve. It takes everyone with steady nerves. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand American strong. United we stand. We stand American strong. City by city, state by state, town by town, stand American great. Everyone stands American strong. When strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand American strong. United we stand. We stand American strong. United we stand.
If these statements are true, the president should humbly apologize to every Gold Star mother and father and every Blue Star family that he's denigrated and insulted.
It's a disgrace. Who would say a thing like that? Only an animal would say a thing like that.
Strong words from Joe Biden and a sharp denial from President Trump over the Atlantic article claiming the president called fallen U.S. soldiers, quote, losers and suckers. Let's hear from both sides of the aisle here. Sinclair political commentator Amisha Cross and member of the President's National Security Education Board, host of America First on Salem Radio, and Sinclair media contributor Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Amisha, I'll start with you. Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic claims he's got unnamed sources. Here's my question, Amisha. We've heard about this going back and forth. I mean, with something so important, we're a couple of months away from a presidential election. Is it smart? Is it wise to run a story like this without any named sources?
I think that this go round, the October surprise might have come in September. Unnamed sources, despite what we've heard from Trump and some of his acolytes on that front, are actually a very vital part of journalism. They've helped to crack open a lot of information regarding cases in the past of misdeeds of presidents. There were over 200 unnamed sources if we're talking about, the Watergate scandal. So unnamed sources are an essential part of journalism, specifically to help to avoid any type of reprisals for people who are giving information that the public needs to know. So I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with there being unnamed sources. What we really need to focus on is the fact that we have a president who has made disparaging remarks.
Okay, hold on. Let's stay on this. Let's stay on topic. Unnamed sources. It feels like hearsay. It feels like gossip to me with something this relevant and this big.
I don't agree with that. Again, the Watergate scandal had 200 unnamed sources. There were unnamed sources during, Clinton's impeachment as well. Like, there are unnamed sources to several things that actually have fact-based analysis to them, and we find out more information later, which I think is what we actually heard from the Atlantic editor as well when he said more is going to come out. I don't think that any of that is untrue.
Well, how about you, Sebastian? Do you think, is it okay to run a story like this? Now, remember, this could go the other way, cut the other way as well. If a story comes out about Biden with unnamed sources, should we be using unnamed sources to expose some of these rather dramatic stories?
I can play this game too. I have 27 unnamed sources that say Jeffrey Goldberg beats his wife. You see how easy that is? No, this is a hack job. This is propaganda. This is the attempt through the Billy Bush tape to try and take out the president before the election. Let's be clear what this magazine is. This is the Atlantic that has headline after headline after headline attacking the president, which is about to have this quote-unquote Atlantic Fest celebration.
Let's do this for a second, Sebastian. Jennifer Griffin, a very good reporter from Fox News, I worked with her for the better part of 11 years, had very good sources. She claims to have sources as well. Does that lend credibility to the story?
Not if they're unnamed. I mean, look at the statement yesterday. 21 individuals of senior military rank have gone on record to say this is a lie, this isn't who Donald Trump is, it didn't happen. 21 named sources to 4 unnamed ones. And by the way, John Bolton, who's no fan of the president, has gone on record to say it didn't happen. And look, let's play the game Amisha likes to play. She likes to play identity politics. How many people in this discussion now worked in the Defense Department? I did for 5.5 years with our military, all branches. How many people in this discussion worked for the president when he was Mr. Trump and when he was President Trump? I did, and I still do. So let me tell you, this is absolutely impossible. It never happened.
All right.
Donald Trump, in my eyesight, I've seen him do this, loves our military.
And there's no question. And I would actually say Biden probably loves the military as well. But here's the point. Amisha, what about it? When John Bolton, who had a book that was unbelievably anticipated and just trashed President Trump top to bottom, Amisha, when Bolton says that this never happened because he was there, now can we push back on this story and maybe point some fingers at Goldberg in the Atlantic?
I think we need to wait for more information to come out. But again, this is not outside of the character of Donald Trump. This is a president who made fun of prisoners of war. This is a president who's made fun of the disabled. Again, we need to wait until we hear more information, but it's not outside of who Trump actually is. And I don't think that we should disregard it just because something that's done in journalism regularly when stories are breaking, and in that regard, I mean unnamed sources, is something that now conservatives are castigating as though it has never happened in the past. Unnamed sources are extremely important to cracking stories. And I don't think that we should, roll out the integrity of journalism based on the fact that this type of source that has been around for generations is now being thrown under because it is reporting something that's not likely.
You just used an oxymoron. You said integrity of journalism. That could be seen as an oxymoron. Final thoughts, Sebastian, about 30 seconds.
Yeah, anonymous sources are only important to the left when they feed into their propaganda attacks against the president. You know how this story is a lie? Very simply. In the last 24 hours on video, Jeffrey Goldberg said, my sources are not going to give out their names, senior military officials, quote, because they're afraid of the president's tweets. Excuse me, what? A senior military source who can go into a trench when bullets are flying, but is scared of the president's tweets? It's a crock. It's garbage. It never happened.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. Sebastian and Amisha, always good. I can't wait to get the phone calls this week about this discussion, debate with the both of you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, sir.
Every week, we honor first responders who died in the line of duty protecting our great country. Corporal Bryant Searcy with the Wayne County Sheriff's Office in Michigan was killed after he was attacked by an inmate in Detroit last week. Corporal Searcy served the Sheriff's Office for 18 years. He leaves behind his wife and daughter. Captain Stan Elrod with the Georgia Department of Natural Resources was hit and killed by a drunk driver. It happened last week while he was out jogging on duty as part of his department's wellness program. Captain Elrod was at the Georgia Department of Natural Resources for 27 years. He's survived by his wife and 2 sons. Rest in peace, officers.
America, one nation, from Florida to St. Louis to Seattle. America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, delivers facts, not falsehoods.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I appreciate the opportunity to clear some of it up.
Hard-edged opinions.
We can no longer rely on China to be the primary producer of so many critical products that we need at a time of crisis.
Tough topic debates.
Has the mainstream media vetted Joe Biden the way they vetted others on the right?
I just believe that all women have the right to speak their truth and that those truths should also be investigated. The end, regardless of what political party they are a part of.
America This Week reveals the topics and issues that pulse throughout America. Fighting COVID-19.
We're working with every single state to be able to detect outbreaks before they spread into the community.
And the path forward.
Getting back to some degree of normality, that will come. We will get over this.
America This Week investigates chaos at the southern border.
Go, 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 go.
The poisoning of America.
It's in the soils, it's in the water, and it's in our blood.
Toxic chemicals linked to multiple cancers found in towns across America.
We were poisoned, and we are still poisoned.
Almost every day, there is a new community that is finding out that their water is contaminated.
America This Week relentlessly seeks the truth on your behalf.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America. United we stand.
It's a disgrace. Who would say a thing like that? Only an animal would say a thing like that. There is nobody that has more respect for not only our military, but for people that gave their lives in the military.
Let's talk balls and strikes. Dan Littman is the White House reporter for Politico. Thanks for joining me, Dan. I want to talk, we've been talking about this, the Atlantic article, the reliability of anonymous sources. Editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, has said he's got 4 sources, all unnamed. What are your thoughts, being one of the highest profile reporters in D.C., about using unnamed sources?
I think they're entirely legitimate to use them in certain cases. Not every case deserves an anonymous source. And in stories, if a source is saying something that is completely uncontroversial, they should be on the record. But something sensitive like this, I can see why Goldberg would include that and would use them, because as long as you can trust the sources themselves, and they seem to be senior military officials or former military officials, they don't want to get crosswise with Trump, and they don't want to get on the receiving end of lots of negative tweets on them. You know, you can get death threats from those things. And so that's why they are anonymous in this case.
So our audience understands what we're asked to do then, as a viewer, as a listener, or as a reader, is to put our trust in the reporter, in fact, and that we trust that they have vetted these sources and have vetted the information. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, and so reporters have to know who those anonymous sources are, obviously, and like Goldberg knows these people. Jennifer Griffin, the Fox News military correspondent, who also confirmed key details of this, she knows these sources, and the president knows them too. And so this is something, this is not, these anonymous sources are not unknown to the reporter and their editor and legal teams sometimes who vet these stories before publication when they're very sensitive. And so, that's why people use them.
Let's take a listen to Goldberg in his own words on MSNBC recently. Listen.
It is a reasonable question to ask why people who have had direct exposure to Donald Trump, who know what Donald Trump has said, who know what Donald Trump has done, won't simply come out and say it. And I share that view that it's not good enough.
So isn't that Goldberg saying, in order for us to believe him, he needs to bring more goods, and maybe a named source or something more, so we can buy into this?
Well, I think obviously named sources make the story more credible, because people can say, hey, is John Kelly, is he more reliable than, say, a President Trump? And I'm not saying Kelly was the source, but sometimes people do, it says decline a comment, when in fact they actually were talking to the reporter anonymously. And so it's usually just decline a comment on the record. And so, but we don't live in an ideal world. And for former administration officials, they have to, maintain livelihoods in DC. And so they're worried about getting on the receiving end of criticism from this president. Dan,
I know you've done, you've studied history of journalism. I know this. Just tell our audience how the use of unnamed sources has evolved over time.
Well, you know, it has had an evolution. It feels like there have been a lot of anonymous sources in the last few years because there's just been so many leaks from this administration, and there's constant backbiting and infighting, and knife fights in the White House and in the administration with people criticizing their own colleagues because they don't like them or they want to get an upper hand or an advantage. And so, I wasn't around during the Carter administration, but it feels like there were fewer anonymous sources back then.
Honestly, it feels like the use of anonymous sources was almost what something that the Inquirer would do, where it didn't feel like it was real journalism. It was more hearsay. It was more gossip column type stuff. And now it's become commonplace in journalism every day. Dan, I ran out of time. I want to continue on this. We'll bring you back again very soon. Dan Lippman, everybody, the Politico article, he is on top of all things D.C., Dan Lippman, Politico. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Thanks, Eric.
Set your DVR and never miss an episode of America This Week. Go to facebook.com/AmericaBolling, all one word, to see when we air in your city. You can also find our shows and big interviews on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to our America This Week YouTube channel.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America. United we stand. Ready to help, ready to serve. It takes everyone with steady nerves. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, American strong. City by city, state by state, town by town, stand American great. Everyone stands American strong. When strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand America. United we stand. We stand America. United we stand.
You can watch America This Week wherever you are and wherever you go. Just download the Stir app to your smartphone, Roku, Apple TV, and other devices, and start getting 100% free TV. America This Week airs every Sunday at 9 a.m. and again at midnight on your local Stir City channel. That's Channel 1. That puts every show at your fingertips. Again, 100% free. Thanks for joining us for another episode of America This Week. Even though we're getting closer to fall and winter, there is some good news. We're getting closer than ever to getting a coronavirus vaccine, so maybe we'll get to enjoy at least a fraction of 2020. Halloween, still up in the air, but there's still hope for Thanksgiving. Keep your fingers crossed. Have a great night, everybody.